Hey Optimancers, Chris here. Today I want to talk about playing on a grid and some of the weird things that happen when you play that way. I occasionally provide a visual simulation in my videos, particularly when discussing tactics, and I'll get asked about some of the determinations I make for spell shapes. So today I'm going to go through why I make those determinations and some of the options for a more dynamic grid-based game. But before we do that, I just want to take a minute to thank some of the fine folks that support this channel. My patrons enjoy benefits such as ad-free early releases of these videos, and my top level patrons can join me for a game of D&D every month. Today I just want to thank Dave Peters, David F., Dewey Cheatham and Howe, Don, Ed Iverson, Eric Wasserman, Glenn Wilson, James Thomas, Jay McAvenue, John Matera, and Jonathan Edward Black. Thank you so much for continuing to support what I do here. Let's get started. So we're playing 5th edition D&D on a grid. Our wizard casts Fireball. Fireball describes its area as a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point we choose within range. So, does our fireball look like this? Or does our fireball look like this? I mean, the simple answer is that a sphere is round and should be represented by a round shape on the grid. So this should be the shape of our fireball. And if we go to Jeremy Crawford, he says this is the intent as well. The intent is that a circular area of effect is circular whether or not you're playing on a grid. Now the player's handbook tells us what a shape is, but not how they're represented on a grid. But the Dungeon Master's Guide does. According to the Dungeon Master's Guide, you choose an intersection of squares as the point of an area of effect, and then follow the rules for that kind of area as normal. If an area of effect is circular and it covers at least half a square, it affects that square. So let's do that. Let's place a fireball on this map. So we're going to be a little less pretty with this one, and we're going to actually draw it. So first, let's choose our point of origin. This, as the rules tell us, has to be an intersection of squares. So let's go ahead and choose this spot right there. So this here becomes our point of origin. So now I need to create a circle that has a radius of 20 feet, and as long as at least half a square is covered, it's affected. So going out 20 feet in this direction takes me about here. If I want to go 20 feet in this direction, takes me about here. If I want to go 20 feet in this direction, takes me about here. And if I want to go 20 feet in this direction, it takes me about here. So if I draw those points on the board, we have here, we have here, we have here, and we have here. But let's go a little further than that. I also want it 20 feet in this direction, and 20 feet in this direction, and 20 feet in this direction, and 20 feet in this direction if it is indeed going to have a 20-foot radius. So that means the edge of our circle also needs to be here, and it needs to be here, and it needs to be here, and it needs to be here. So notice something? Yep, we've got a square. If I want to draw this on the map that connects all these squares, there's really only one way to do it, and that is a full square. And you might say that's not a circle, but is it not a circle? I mean, I'm not an expert in geometry, but my understanding is that a circle has the same distance from the center to any of its corners. And in this case, because of the way that grids work in D&D, this meets that criteria. Now we could make a circle that intersects some of these squares, like we could put a circle right there, or I could put a circle right there. And that also intersects 4 of the spaces that I previously measured. So if we look at the smaller circle on our map, it's 20 feet out to there, but if we look at the larger circle on our map, it is 20 feet out to there. So both of them have an edge that is 20 feet from the center. So which one is the correct size? Now, according to Jeremy Crawford, it's the smaller circle. The issue is, of course, that we now are only out 15 feet from the center this way. So we do not actually have a 20-foot radius here for this circle, because we have 15 feet this way and 15 feet that way, and that is in fact a 15-foot radius or a 30-foot diameter. So by geometric definition, the blue lines do not represent a circle on this grid. Now we can go to Xanathars for some more guidance, as there is a section on area of effects. And this does provide us the token method. And according to the token method, our fireball would look like this. So now we do truly have a 20-foot radius. We're 20 feet there, we're 20 feet there, we're 20 feet there, we're 20 feet there. No matter where we go around to the edge, it is 20 feet from the center, and therefore a 20-foot radius, and technically a very square-looking circle. The issue is, of course, our fireball looks like a square. And although in theory a square effect of 40 by 40 should cover more area than a 20-foot radius circle, it doesn't using the token method. Still, this is the method I've grown used to using. I figure if an effect like Spirit Guardian says it flits 15 feet around you, then it should actually flit 15 feet around you, not 15 feet in some directions and 10 feet in other directions. Because that is exactly what happens if you make it a circle on the grid. Because it goes out 15 feet this way, but it only goes out 10 feet this way. So a creature that is 15 feet away from you is out of your area of effect if it's diagonal to you, but in your area of effect if it's not diagonal to you. Doesn't make any sense. But if we make it a square, then they truly do flit 15 feet around you. And this brings up something else interesting about playing on a grid, because I've been asked why Spirit Guardians on a grid is 35 feet across. Shouldn't it be 30 feet across if it's a 15-foot radius? So as we can see here, from one edge to the other, that's 35 feet. And Spirit Guardian says 15-foot radius. So how can that be? So what happens is things get really interesting if we're selecting a creature as our point of origin instead of a point. Because a point has to be an intersection of squares. But a creature actually takes up space. Normally with spells, the point of origin is an intersection, but the rules tell us, and I quote, typically a point of origin is a point in space, but some spells have an area whose origin is a creature or an object. So let's consider for a moment if we're large-sized. Maybe we're the subject of an enlarge reduce spell, or maybe we have a bit of Rune Knight. If the spell says that the spirits flit at a range of 15 feet from us, then it has to look like this. Now clearly this isn't a 30-foot radius circle. However, if we make this any smaller, we're not satisfying the text of the spell. Again, we must remember that our point of origin in this case isn't a single point. A large creature takes up 4 squares, and that entire creature is the point of origin. So what ends up being 15 feet to the left of this creature, and what ends up being 15 feet to the right of this creature, is more than 30 feet across. Now I have to say, I am getting a bit tired of everything just being squares though. I mean, doesn't a fireball circle just look more elegant on a grid? Isn't it more immersive? Well, the solution actually isn't that hard. Remember that in 3rd edition, spell effects weren't always squares, but in 4th edition they were. This is because the everything as squares makes the game simpler. Moving diagonally and moving straight take the same movement, it's easy to count, it's easy to place effects. However, if you do want circles and squares to be different, we can do so without adding all that much complication. If we look at Chapter 8 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, we get this optional rule. When measuring range or moving diagonally on a grid, the first diagonal square counts as 5 feet, but the second diagonal square counts as 10 feet. This pattern of 5 feet, then 10 feet continues whenever you're counting diagonally, even if you move horizontally or vertically between different bits of diagonal movement. This is exactly how it used to work in 3rd edition, it's how it works in 3.5, and it's how it works in Pathfinder. As soon as we do this, suddenly a 20-foot radius now looks like a circle. As soon as we make this change, suddenly, if we're on a circle, 20 feet to there, 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 20 feet to there. This now looks like a circle, and it now geometrically is a circle. With virtual tabletops, you can set this up to calculate automatically, but if you're playing on a physical map, you just need to remember that when determining distance, every other diagonal square counts as 10. So, as a DM, you have a lot of options. You can use the suggested method in the basic rules, which is the most simple for movement, but it doesn't make a lot of sense when it comes to areas of effect, at least in my opinion. Or you can run the token method, which is the most simple of all, and I find that it runs pretty cleanly. Or you can use the optional diagonal movement method, which is the least simple, but probably the most realistic, and honestly, in my experience, it's not that much more complicated. Find out what's right for you. For myself, I think I'm going to start using the optional diagonal movement and try that out for a while. I've been using the token method, it's been working just fine, but I kind of like the idea now of let's see what happens when we make circles into circles. In my next video, I'm going to be discussing the new Unearthed Arcana lineage options and the guidelines that have been set for future races and lineages, and I hope you'll join me for that. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.